This documentary was produced by students of the Wooden Law School's Human Rights Law Clinic, 2014. The focus of this documentary would be the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex community, commonly called the LGBTI community. This documentary is divided into 3 parts. Part 1 is a review of the laws in 4 Caribbean countries, namely Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Guyana, and Barbados. Part 2 focuses on the issue of discrimination against the LGBTI community as it relates to immigration in Trinidad and Tobago. Part 3 will be an overview of the Caribbean culture and how such culture reacts to and treats members of the LGBTI community. This review in no way attempts to advocate that gay laws should be decriminalized, but rather that members of the LGBTI community's constitutional and fundamental rights already existing should not be infringed or breached because of their lifestyle. They are entitled to these rights by virtue of being human. Before reviewing the laws of the 4 countries, attention should be given to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to which most, if not all, Caribbean territories have signed on to. Generally speaking, the Declaration provides for the equality of all human beings, regardless of race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. The Declaration maintains, by virtue of Article 12, that no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence, nor to attacks upon his honor and reputation, since everyone has the right to protection of the law against such interference or attacks. We will now review the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. The Sexual Offences Act, Chapter 1128, Section 13, criminalizes the act of buggery. The section does not mention consent. Therefore, as it stands, 2 consenting adults would be unable to engage in anal sexual intercourse without breaking the law. Moving on to Section 16, we see that the act of serious indecency is also criminalized, and persons convicted under this section shall be liable to imprisonment on conviction. It is interesting to note that unlike Section 13 of the Sexual Offences Act, this section mentions consent. However, the section only protects acts committed between heterosexual persons over the age of 16 who consent to the act. If 2 male persons over 16 years consent to the act, or if 2 female persons over 16 years consent to the act, they would be breaking the law. We will now turn our attention to the Immigration Act, Chapter 1801. An interesting component of this act is that it provides for a prohibited classes of persons. What this in effect means is that individuals who fall under this class cannot enter Trinidad and Tobago. This is illustrated in section 8(1), and it reads, except as provided in subsection 2, entry into Trinidad and Tobago of the persons described in this subsection other than citizens and subject to section 7(2), residents, is prohibited, namely, some of the persons that fall into the prohibited classes may be found under subsection E. In subsection E, we see that prostitutes, homosexuals, or persons living on the earnings of prostitutes or homosexuals are persons reasonably suspected as coming to Trinidad and Tobago for these or any other immoral purposes fall in the prohibited class. The law specifically prohibits persons who are homosexuals from entering Trinidad and Tobago. It thus bars a homosexual entrance to the country solely because of his or her sexual orientation. Naturally, no such ban applies to heterosexual persons. Jamaica and LGBTI rights. The Jamaican Charter 2011. In section 18 of this charter, marriage between a man and a woman is recognized. The charter makes it clear that any other union is not recognized under the laws of Jamaica. Furthermore, section 13 of the charter provides the requisite fundamental rights and freedoms that ought not be abrogated. These rights ought to be upheld since it is enshrined as Jamaica's supreme law. The following subsections ought to be considered. Subsection 3. The right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in the execution of the sentence of a court in respect of a criminal offense of which the person has been convicted. The right of freedom of expression, the right to freedom of movement, the right to freedom from discrimination. Subsection 6. No person shall be subjected to torture or inhumane or degrading punishment or other treatment. These rights extend to all Jamaican nationals, and therefore any breaches of the aforementioned rights would be an infringement on the nationals' rights. The LGBTI community in Jamaica are citizens and humans just like anyone else in Jamaica, and as such the rights should be upheld. As would be seen later in this documentary, Jamaican dancehall culture promotes violence, abuse, and even promotes death on the LGBTI community. As such, the Charter stipulates that no person shall be subjected to torture. This means that the LGBTI community should not be stereotyped to the point that they are tortured. They have the right to equality before the law. The Offences Against the Person Act, 1864. Section 76 of this Act provides for unnatural offences. This section may be presumed to refer to a man or a person with male genitals, since the act of buggery can only include acts of anal penetration or bestiality. Therefore, any person that has male genitals can be charged with this offense if convicted for the act of buggery. The rationale behind buggery was seen in the Buggery Act of 1533, which highlighted that buggery was an unnatural sexual act against the will of man and God. It can be concluded that this section would be a restriction on homosexuals who would want to practice and participate in anal sex, since the sanction would be a term of imprisonment and hard labor for a term of no less than 10 years. Section 77 provides for attempts. This section again relates to a man or a person with male genitals, since in order to attempt such act, you must have male genitals. Section 79 provides for outrages on decency. The aforementioned analysis can once again be employed in this section. However, mention must be made to the term or concept of gross indecency. It was considered in the Criminal Law Amendment Act 1885 and the Sexual Offences Act 1956. Both acts speak to indecency between men. Section 80 provides for other matters. In summing up, it can be concluded that in relation to the LGBTI community, the law in Jamaica does not affect the lesbian community particularly, but it has a harsh impact on the gay society, since its criminal laws seek to treat their intimate actions as acts of crime. The bisexual community may also be affected, since men who sleep with other men, despite having an intimate relationship with females, are negatively affected by the criminal law acts of Jamaica. With regards to the transgender and the intersex community, once they participate in anal sex or bestiality, or have the intention to participate in such acts, they may be culpable and fall within the ambit of the criminal law acts of Jamaica. The laws of Guyana as it relates to the LGBTI community. Guyana, like other Caribbean territories, still retain archaic laws passed down from the British that does not reflect the current evolution of society. Anti-LGBTI legislation is one such illustration. It should be noted that these laws mainly affect the gay, bisexual, and transgender members of the LGBTI community. Lesbian and intersex members are affected the least by these laws. The Constitution. Article 149D(2) of the Guyanese Constitution makes it elusively clear that the state shall, for the purposes of promoting equality, take legislative and other measures designed to protect disadvantaged persons and persons with disabilities. However, the state has failed to definitively do so, since no legislation to date has been passed to protect the rights of the marginalized LGBTI community in Guyana. Laws that discriminate against this group of citizens are as follows. The Criminal Law Offences Act, Chapter 801. Section 352 of this Act makes it an offense for a male to commit the act of gross indecency with another male. Section 353 further goes on to make it an offense to attempt to commit an unnatural offense. More specifically, buggery is deemed as an unnatural offense under this section. Moving on to section 354, one will see that buggery is expressly criminalized. The daunting fact about these offenses is that it targets mainly men who intimately interact and have relations with other men. It is not an objective provision and only applies to one category of persons, that being homosexuals. A justification for retaining the buggery offense over the years was that it made up for the deficiencies in the definition of rape. As such, the state was able to prosecute males who sexually molested boys or raped men under this offense. However, with the advent of the Sexual Offences Act 2010, there is no need for such a provision anymore, since the definition of rape found in Section 3 of the Sexual Offences Act is wide enough and acknowledges that men as well as women can be victims of rape. The Summary Jurisdiction Offences Act. Perhaps the most controversial offense that has gained recent attention in Guyana is that of cross-dressing. In the year 2009, 4 males were arrested for dressing in female attire contrary to Section 153 of the Summary Jurisdiction Offences Act. These men brought their case in the High Court, challenging the offense on the ground that it was discriminatory. In the ruling of the said case, Quincy McEwen et al. And the AG of Guyana, the learned Chief Justice acting, ruled that the law was not discriminatory since the offense of cross-dressing applied to both men and women. The Chief Justice also declared that cross-dressing is legal so long as it is done for a proper purpose. The controversy here is that proper purpose was not defined, thereby creating some uncertainty in the law. The applicants appealed this case and are currently awaiting a decision. They still maintain that the law is discriminatory since only males who engage in cross-dressing are affected. Women who cross-dress every day are not reprimanded for such acts. In fact, a strict application of this law would mean that women who wear trousers should be prosecuted as well. However, to date, no female has been brought before the court for this offense. We will now turn our attention to the laws of Barbados and how they affect the LGBTI community. Caribbean jurisdictions are among the many jurisdictions which have remained loyal to the position outlawing the LGBTI lifestyle. Barbados is no exception to this culture and has arguably some of the harshest provisions. Generally, there are no LGBTI rights in any legislation respective to Barbados. However, there are laws which make such activity an offense, thus by inference criminalizing any LGBTI conduct. Specifically, the Sexual Offences Act, Chapter 154. Section 9 of this Act stipulates that any person who commits buggery is guilty of an offense and is liable on conviction on indictment to imprisonment for life. This particular offense specifically speaks to buggery, a particular act which gay men engage in to facilitate intimate sexual intercourse. However, the law is only enforceable if reported, as the law is not concerned with what goes on in one's bedroom. Hence, by inference, homosexual activity is outlawed in Barbados. Additionally, Section 12, subsections 1 to 3 criminalizes acts of serious indecency. These provisions speak to serious indecency, which has been defined in subsection 3 of the section. Based on the definition, there is an express criminalization of LGBTI conduct as it speaks to unnatural acts. The legislation and society in whole views LGBTI conduct as unnatural, therefore making any such conduct illegal. As a result of the aforementioned, homophobia has generated throughout society as we know it. In this case, Barbados. In fact, society is so opposed that members of the LGBTI community are subjected to much discrimination, which is a direct contravention of their constitutionally protected fundamental right to protection from discrimination. When we look at the Constitution of Barbados, particularly Article 23, 1A, it states that no law shall make any provision that is discriminatory either of itself or in its effect. Subsection B provides that no person shall be treated in a discriminatory manner by any person acting by virtue of any written law or in the performance of the functions of any public office or any public authority. Subsection 2 of the article defines discriminatory. In spite of this, members of the LGBTI community are subjected to discrimination, which further infringes and breaches their civil and economical rights. For instance, Article 12(1) of the Barbadian Constitution declares that no person shall be deprived of his life intentionally, save in execution of the sentence of a court. Conversely, there have been instances where persons were deprived of this very basic right due to their lifestyle. For instance, the life of a non-gay man was threatened when his house was torched by homophobic individuals. Mr. Darcy Deer of the United Gays and Lesbians Against AIDS in Barbados was the victim of this senseless act and now fears that someone will try to burn down his house again, just as they did 7 years ago in 2007. This is an example of a hate crime against gays simply because of their lifestyle. Article 15(1) of the Barbadian Constitution states that no person shall be subjected to torture or to inhumane or degrading punishment or other treatment. Yet, as reported in the 2013 Barbados Human Rights Report, a police officer made anti-LGBTI remarks to individuals stopped from making too much noise during a late-night LGBTI group's bus crawl event. Another example of the LGBTI community being ill-treated was on August 5, 2013, when unidentified individuals hurled stones and homophobic slurs at one of the flag bearers during the annual Grand Cattlemen Parade, simply because that flag bearer was a homosexual. Article 22 of the Barbadian Constitution provides for free movement. It is important to note that these articles did not state, save and except these individuals are lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transsexuals, or intersex. This means that such persons still have their rights under the Constitution. They are therefore entitled to safety, entitled to be able to work, entitled to the right to move freely, the same way that heterosexuals are entitled to these rights. These rights are afforded to members of the LGBTI community simply because, like everyone else, they are humans, and humans who are citizens of the country of Barbados. LGBTI and immigration. For this segment, an interview was conducted with Mr. Maurice Tomlinson. In this interview, immigration laws, regulations, and practices that discriminate against the LGBTI community was discussed. Mr. Maurice Tomlinson is a Jamaican lawyer, gay rights activist, and educator. He is a facilitator with LGBTI Aware Caribbean, which provides LGBTI sensitization training to Caribbean stakeholders in the AIDS response, such as police, healthcare providers, and media workers. Currently, Mr. Tomlinson is a claimant in a case before the Caribbean Court of Justice, challenging the immigration laws of Belize and Trinidad and Tobago that ban the entry of homosexuals. We will now show the interview that was conducted on December 4th, 2014.
First question that we have for you is that in the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, provisions are made for free movement. Are there any restrictions to the free movement of LGBTI persons?
No, there are absolutely no restrictions on the movement of LGBTI persons. The states are given the permission to restrict the freedom of movement of persons when it's required for public health and some other restricted reasons. And the question was, is the restriction on LGBTI people one of those grounds? And that is what this court will be asked to determine. But there are no specific mention of LGBTI people in the treaty.
Great. Okay, so the next question. Would you agree that to limit one's right to freedom of movement on the basis of one being a member of the LGBTI community would be a violation of the right to equality?
I certainly would believe it is a violation not only of the right to equality but of the right to national treatment, because if you are not going to ban gay Trinidadians from entering Trinidad, then you certainly can't ban gay Jamaicans from entering Trinidad, because the purpose of the Treaty of Chaguaramas is to ensure that all citizens of CARICOM are treated the same by all states of CARICOM. So it violates my right to equality, to be treated equally like anybody else that's a national of any of the states, and also it violates my right to national treatment.
Great. As an advocate and a member of the LGBTI community, how did the restriction on free movement make you feel?
Well, it certainly made me feel discriminated against to begin with. I looked at the language, and the category of what's called prohibited class has some very archaic language. It describes human beings as homosexuals, chronic alcoholics, mentally or physically disabled persons. The class of people that are prohibited are considered, are lumped together as kind of like the dregs of society, the persons who belong at the margins of society. It was very insulting language. I don't think that is language that Trinidad should be particularly proud of in 2014, given its robust history of challenging and supporting human rights. Your motto, your national anthem is all about every creed and race finding an equal place. The nature of the language is just out of step with Trinidad, and it made me personally feel ashamed for Trinidad that this language is still in your laws, and that is being defended by some people. I mean, the fact that the government of Trinidad would even dare to defend this language Trinidad, I think.
Okay, so my next question would be concerning celebrities. For the Jazz Festival in 2007, Sir Elton John, he was permitted into Trinidad for this particular festival. So what would be your views on the fact of them allowing him being a celebrity as opposed to you, who would probably be considered a regular person?
Right. I mean, that's a bit of a loaded question. But I will say that the fact of the differential treatment is obscene, to put it mildly. Under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, for me to go from Jamaica to Trinidad should be the same as me moving from Kingston to Montego Bay.
Correct.
I should have no qualms, no fears, no restrictions, other than if I represent some kind of, threat to society, threat to Trinidadian society. And just the fact of my being homosexual, not being necessarily engaging in any activity there, nothing, just the fact of my being myself bans me from entering your country. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And the fact that you would make an exception for someone just because, they are a celebrity, and what's even worse, they're a non-Caribbean celebrity. It's particularly offensive. I think that Sir Elton should have refused the invitation when he was made aware that there was such a law. He frankly should. He certainly didn't need the money. He should have refused. And that is one of the reasons I have refused to go to Trinidad, because maybe I would be let in. Who knows? Because I'm a lawyer, because I was invited to do work with UNAIDS, because I have certain access and privilege, I would perhaps not have been confronted by the immigration officers. But that's not the point. The point is, I represent a class of persons that are prohibited simply from who we are. Not anything we do, but simply from who we are. And so I'm making a stand for them and for myself, because I don't know if the immigration officers may decide to stop me or harass me or use the law arbitrarily against me and then decide to let me in, after embarrassing me. A stand has to be taken, and this law needs to go.
So, on that note, do you believe that your case would assist in changing the mindset of how immigration authorities treat with persons of the LGBTI community?
Well, I certainly hope so. Changing laws is one thing. Changing hearts and minds is another thing altogether, which is why, for example, my husband and I, we travel around the Caribbean doing LGBTI sensitization training for police, immigration officers, stakeholders in the LGBTI human rights liberation struggle and HIV response. Because a lot of the times, persons have not knowingly interacted with members of the LGBTI community. And that's why they still have these irrational fears, because they don't know that what they're talking about is, perhaps affecting someone very close to them. So we give them an opportunity to ask the questions of us as a gay couple through the organization called LGBTI Aware Caribbean, where we're facilitators. And, sometimes the questions are very intrusive and rude. They genuinely don't know, and I don't think that they're being malicious. I think they just don't know. For example, they want to know which one of us is the top and which one of us is the bottom.
Okay.
Who's the husband and who's the wife, and those kinds of questions. And so, we give them the space to ask the questions, and we find that after they've asked those questions and had an opportunity to realize just how normal we are, maybe even quite boring because of our relationship, they realize that there's no difference, and so they leave there with a different mindset. So changing the law is one thing, and hopefully the law would then allow us to come to Trinidad and do the training, because we have been invited to do the training in Trinidad, but we will not go once the law is in place, because we'll be breaking the law. And my husband was a police officer and I'm a lawyer, so we can't go to a country to break the law to talk about the law. We're hoping that once the law goes, we can go to Trinidad, we can do this LGBTI aware sensitization training and help the immigration officers, police officers stakeholders to realize that LGBTI people, one, we're normal, and two, quite possibly, we're right next to you. We're your pastors, we're your co-workers, we're your family members. And hopefully, knowing that will help them to become a lot more tolerant of difference. So the law is just one thing, but it will be very critical to allowing us to, for example, come and help to change the mindset of the immigration officers.
As there is currently no law reform, it would seem, in place, what system, in your opinion, should be implemented in order to reduce the breaches of this particular provision, at least until that time?
Well, I know that there are LGBTI people who are entering Trinidad, and there are waivers which are given to them. I think that it is unfortunate that these persons are contributing to the maintenance of the law by not challenging it, by one, breaking the law, and by two, entering the country knowing that they're breaking the law. So I think the only way to get rid of the law is to challenge it, is to speak out against it. I don't know that simply going and getting a waiver and entering Trinidad is the most effective way to ensure that the breaches will stop or that the harassment will stop. We know that in 2010, a trans individual went to Trinidad from Belize, ironically, and was stopped at the airport and was harassed for a very long time. This was facilitated and given soccer because you do have the possibility to deport somebody because of their gender nonconformity or their sexual orientation. This cannot be stopped without some legal intervention. Either the government must reform the law or the courts must get rid of it.
Great. I have a few more questions.
Sure.
This next question: does the LGBTI community face any immigration issues outside of the Caribbean region that you're aware of, or is this?
I do not know of any other country in the world that has a ban on the entry of homosexuals. They may exist, but I don't know of them. I know that in the Western Hemisphere, only Belize and Trinidad have laws which ban the entry of people simply because of their sexual orientation. Not that they're actually doing anything, but just because of who they're attracted to. Trinidad and Belize ban them from coming into your country. And I mean, it's the most ridiculous, archaic, arbitrary ban you could think of. Because telling me that I can't come into your country because I like, someone of the same gender, is irrational. How does that affect you?
Is there any advice you would give to members of the LGBTI community who may be faced with similar experiences?
I think when you are faced with these kinds of situations, it is important that you stand up and challenge it, because, as someone once said, a lie repeated often enough becomes the truth. And if you don't challenge it, then people think it's okay. If you don't resist, if you don't, push back against this kind of intolerant behavior and these kinds of intolerant practices, then nobody will see that there's something wrong with it. I mean, I know that some persons may think that being strident is dangerous. And there are ways that you can push back without being vulgar or visible. But you must always confront. You must always, if it's in humor, you want to do it humorously, through whatever way that's most convenient for you. But you must stand up, because if we don't push back against these things, then they will be used against us in subtle and in big ways.
Thank you very much. That was our last question. And on behalf of my colleagues and I'd like to say a big thank you.
Just because of their lifestyle, members of the LGBTI community are denied entry into Trinidad and Tobago. Under Section 8E of the Immigration Act, these individuals are barred automatically, even though they have not committed any act that breaches immigration policy. This breach is invoked simply because they are who they are.
Is that if we do implement legislation that gives equal rights to the LGBTI community, would be the backlash. I fear that society will not be able to accept them as being equals and having equal rights in Trinidad, and that there may be violence outbursts.
My main concern with the gay community is the fact that a lot of gay men and women have wives and husbands, and they also have relationships with other gay people, and they are spreading sexually transmitted diseases by doing this. And I have an issue with that. And I think, well, for example, to make it more clear, for example, a man may have a wife and children and may be married for, let's say, 10 to 15 years, and he may have a younger boyfriend who is in his early 20s, who is wild and promiscuous and wants to have fun, and he may have sexual intercourse with that younger boyfriend and his wife, because I mean that's his wife, and she wouldn't think to use condoms or whatever. So that spreads HIV, and not just HIV but other sexually transmitted diseases, and that can mash up a home, because then the children would be devastated, and then the wife may want a divorce and her health may deteriorate. And so that's my issue. That's my only issue with the gay community.
I have no problem whatsoever with the LGBTI community. I believe fully that people should be able to love whomever they want to.
Concern is that in Guyana there are what I would say different classes of these people. They're the upper class and the lower class, and the ones that are from the lower class, they're a bit flamboyant and boisterous. So what would happen is that people would avoid looking at them because it might start some argument, quarrel, or something of that sort. So that is basically my concern with them. I don't have a problem with their lifestyles. That's up to them, however they choose to live their lifestyles. But the ones from the lower class, those are the ones that people try to avoid because of their reaction to a look. Sometimes you're not even focusing on them. You might just be looking in their direction and they feel the need to just let you have it.
Are you ask me? Are you really asking me? You mean for say you want people legalize about the boys them? Nah man. Them things can't run about Jamaica, you know. Jamaica ain't about that. I mean, if the rest of the Caribbean want to do that, it's up to them. But me feel say, and John know me feel say that, nah man, that bomber, me can't correspond this thing, eh? But listen to me. True or false? The batty boys them bring the AIDS. You understand me? The batty boys them ruin the families. You understand me? So we can't really allow that. Them things can't run about Jamaica. Jamaica not about them things at all. I mean, if me feel said that the Prime Minister want to legalize them things, me have to remind her that them things can't happen in her cabinet. You understand me? Because we not about them things that. We not chat about the boy. No man not to lay down with no man, and no woman not to lay down with no woman. That's abomination. And the Babylon want to bring them things. Babylon can't bring them things about Jamaica, man. Them things can't happen here. Them things can't happen in the Caribbean, because we Caribbean people have to stand up against them things because of the white man thing, you understand? And then people from the West, they want to bring them things and run them from the Caribbean people. We can't have that. Because Babylonian system fall. Land and bridge fall down. And then want the Caribbean for fall just up. But we can't have that for happen. Because me don't know about nobody else. Any boy child of mine said that he want to go be batty boy. Nah man. And any girl child of mine said but she want to go grind pum pum. Them things can't happen in Jamaica. Them can't happen. Me I say not in my house. Can't happen. So me feel sad that them should legalize the batty boy thing, you know. But you legalize the batty boy thing, you legalize Satan. And you send fire upon Satan. The time don't have to legalize the batty boy thing, they should legalize the marijuana. So I'm going to blaze up a chalice. You understand me?
Ready.
Well, first of all, I don't think that, you know, they should get any legal rights, because one that want their children to grow up in a society where they're thinking that they could sleep with people of the same sex, because want to try hard at home to bring them along the right path, the Christian path, right? I mean, I gonna be subjective in my view because I is a Christian, and as a Christian, you don't want them things to be like plaguing your family, because to me that is sin. So, but if the legislators, they feel that there's something that they want to go down that road, I feel they should get like a referendum from the people, because at the end of the day, it's the people who go decide whether or not they want the society to turn gay, because this is what we're gonna happen, because the whole society now gonna go haywire, because these people don't have no time and place, and they don't have no order, and they behave as if they're running the place, and they tell you that all the time. You understand? So I don't really feel that we should really give them that legal right. You understand? The Caribbean is not yet ready for it. We got so many things that we have to deal with in the Caribbean. We got to deal with AIDS, and we got to deal with Ebola, and we got to deal with chikungunya. And so we don't want to have to deal with the kind of infestation that will really happen, because you're going to find a lot of people coming out of the closet and thing. I mean, I won't want for that to happen, because that will really stay in the Caribbean, boy. I mean, before they do that, I prefer that they will legalize marijuana. Yeah.
Man to man is so unjust. Man to man just bring disgust. I don't even like the word bottom. Never gonna get to the bottom of things. Never gonna hit rock bottom. No. Never gonna go to the bottom of a street. I don't like Marvin Gaye. Why is her name Peter Gay? If I should sprain my ankle, I will never use Ben Gay. Them frequent. Them need to stay far from we. Them frequent. Can we know now when they mean
word. I want you can't stop please. Come on. We have to boom by in a body boy head. Now we not promote the body man, them happy dead. We have to boom by in a body boy head. Now we not promote the body man, them happy dead. We have to, you know, you go pan, kiss up and kneel down in a bed for you.
From them a par in a chichi man can. If the fire make we burn them. From them a drink in a chichi man bar. If the fire make we
My name is Dr. Evil. I'm trying to find a reason why should the next man lie.
Rasta man don't apologize to nobody, boy. If you're this King Selassie, I'm a gunshot to your boy.
Nothing no go so. From you never lie with another man in a bed. Tell them it's a nothing no go.
Gays and lesbians in Jamaica live in a state of constant fear. We live knowing that the probability of us being killed is very high.
Dwayne Jones was a transgender youth who was chased out of home at about 14 years old. He was killed because he was at a party, he was dressed in female wear, and someone at the party outed him.
This was at a street dance with about 300 people, and it appeared that no one attempted to intervene as they ran him down, stabbed him, shot him 3 times, and then ran over him with a car and left him to die on the side of the road.
How does it reflect on society when you have a 16-year-old kid that's being so brutally murdered and nothing happens, no consequence? When I was in Jamaica and I interviewed over 77 LGBT people, the one thing that we heard time and time again was about how they were not accepted by society. Kids as young as 12 years of age being kicked out of their homes.
I was beaten by 6 guys along with my brother and my mother in Spanish Town, where I had to run and pack my things and leave from that community. That's how I ended up here.
I have been following the homeless LGBT youth who live in storm drains. For these youth, it means that they have shown signs
of behavior that is outside of the heterosexual norms. That may mean that they are bullied at home, at school, or bullied within their families. Sometimes communities threaten to beat the gay youth, presumably to beat the gayness out of him. And the threat can be escalated to threats of death or threats of burning down the home in which the youth lives. These persons feel that there is nowhere to go.
Homosexuality is not necessarily illegal in Jamaica. However, Jamaica does have the buggery laws on its books. The buggery laws are very old laws that come from when Jamaica was under British rule. While it doesn't outlaw homosexuality, it does outlaw anal sex between men. But the interpretation by different government agencies, including the police, fuels homophobia.
There have been too many cases in which persons who have attacked members of the LGBT community have not been charged, let alone convicted.
I was beaten up by 4 police officers in a pharmacy in Kingston in front of over 200 people. I went to live in hiding. One day I was stuck in traffic and a man walked across from a parked car on the other side of the road, and he came across and said to me, he said, "We'll find you and we're going to kill you." That was a life-changing moment. I didn't go back home.
People are leaving Jamaica because they fear for their lives. They don't feel safe at home in Jamaica. And they're moving to countries like Canada to find safety.
The reason I left Jamaica is because I was kicked out of the closet, so I had to flee the country that I was born in to seek refuge in a country where I am fully accepted for my sexual orientation.
I worry every day about the LGBT people in Jamaica. I worry every day. I get phone calls, I got emails, I get letters asking me for help. My life is in danger back home. Can you help?
No one deserves to be hunted and chased out of their homeland. And I think it's supported by our government in the fact that they don't do anything. Why we just can't be allowed to be who we are and treated with the respect and dignity that we deserve.